Seems coincidental, several things I had in mind to mention, Kairoot mentioned. And believe it or not, I wasn't even really prepared. I didn't know he was going to. I can't keep track of what. I was going to pick up a piece of something that I had started night before last, having to do with the fact that any change, wherever, whenever, is going to cost somebody. And I was using the example night before last, if you recall, a relationship, two people, and if one person quit drinking, the example I made up, the relationship is going to be affected, no matter what apparently was the intention of the person who quit drinking. My first intention tonight was to, as you might suspect, point out to you that the internal structure of everybody is such that if we had this, which this is not far off, but if we had this piece of machinery well, I say machinery, it doesn't have to be machinery in the sense that it's active, but if we had this passive piece of something up here, that we had empty spools, nuts and bolts, and they were all wired together, then you do understand hanging, let us say it was hanging like a mobile. And anything that you touch, anything that you pull on, everything else is going to be affected. That's just a fact. That is a good three-dimensional reality. The relationships I was speaking about, wherein externally, if one person changes, then it's going to cost somebody. If you change, if it was possible that internally you change, it's going to cost in you somebody something. And that's what people are not prepared for. And of course they don't normally get surprised and upset because they don't normally change under the 3D rules of the city. But if somebody, for whatever reason, if somebody from their own view apparently do change, that somebody who has been a steady drinker all their life quits drinking, and they'll have some idea of the benefit of change in this regard. But it's going to cost them something. They are going to be surprised. Surprised? No. They're going to be surprised. It is not going to be exactly what they thought. If somebody loses 50 pounds, it's not going to be exactly like they thought, because now, as I was describing a few nights before, the expectations change along with the change if change did happen, so that change is not seen, change is not accepted, change is not felt as though you expected it would affect you. I was going to do all of that. I guess I just did. I was going to take off from there, but as soon as I heard Kairoot even bring this up tonight, I thought tonight might as well be a time to bring out something else, because most of you should be able to piece all of that together. That internally you cannot make any change. If somebody could do anything, if somebody could do that which seemed to be for their own benefit, such as quit drinking, or somebody, if this was possible, if somebody actually decided, well, I'm going to convert and become a Catholic, or I'm just going to become religious. I'm talking about really religious. I'm going to be concerned about my fellow man, yak, yak, yak. And you do something that by everyone, by almost every civilized person on this planet, by everyone's opinion, you'll be making a change for the better, no doubt. It's going to cost you something. And I don't mean cost you some bad habit that your particular church denounces. It's going to cost you. It's going to hurt you in some way. You cannot simply go inside the structure and change something without it affecting everything. But it's going to affect something real nearby. To pull the closest string on a mobile, it's going to affect the closest thing. And you don't intend to, but you can't stop it. But ordinarily, people are not even prepared for it. When I say ordinarily, people are just not prepared for it. They can't deal with it. There's no way in the city you don't deal with that. In the city, it seems to be always a matter of a straightforward approach that's going to come to, everybody assumes, a conclusion. All right, I am going to quit drinking. Not only for my health reasons, but I'm going to quit drinking because my personality is too unpredictable. I'm inclined to beat up my wife. So if I quit drinking, I'll be a better father, I'll be a better husband. But it's going to cost the person. And nobody in the city can prepare for that. Consciousness doesn't even deal with that. It deals on the basis of the split goes somewhere, even though they don't use my terms. And so if you do something that's for the general good, such as if you drink all the time and you are inclined to violence, and you're inclined to get and drink and etc., then for you to become a non-drinker is going to be of benefit to you and society. It is good, good, good. It's just good. You'll be glad you did. Everybody will be glad you did. But somebody in you, in the same way that in a relationship between, as my example, a man and woman, if the man quits drinking, and when they came together, he was drinking, he's been drinking all these months, years, and he quits drinking, the relationship is going to suffer. The other person is going to pay a cost for it. Internally, the same thing. You're going to pay a cost for it. And just as I was pointing out night before last, a relationship can break up and nobody really knows why, and there's no one real reason why, one single reason why. I'm telling you, if we were going to talk about one single reason would be, in my example, as good as any, as valid as any, is the guy quit drinking. Now, nobody in the relationship in the 3D world can understand that. Nobody can defend it. Nobody can deal with it. It's just insane. How can that be? Unless, of course, it was something that the other person tried to say obvious that, to them, obvious that, all right, he quit drinking and he became impotent. Or he quit drinking and his temper even got worse. But other than that, nobody prepares for it, and they can't accept that that is a reason. Having said all that, when I said I decided to go ahead and bring out something else tonight, just while I was listening to Kairoot, by now you should be able to see, or at least see where I point if you can't see, and see why I point, that it is a fact that in a relationship, two people dancing, if one person changes anything, it's going to change the tempo of the dance, it's going to change the maneuvers, it's going to change the relationship. Somebody else is going to pay for you changing. If somebody else changes, it's going to cost you. To see that that is true out there, that is a fact, and then to say, all right, now we've talked about out there, and now let's take it inside, and for you to see, well, that's a fact. That is a fact. If you change one thing in you, it's going to cost something else in you. It's as though there's other people in there. The little partnership that the me that used to drink used to dance with another me and me, probably two or three other me's, but at least one other me and me is why I like to drink, because I'd start dancing with a me and me that I don't dance with sober. It's like the me and me that I have a couple of drinks and I got to the bar, and instead of feeling like Mr. Clumsy, I get two or three drinks and I feel like, hello mama, what's happening? That internally, it's not just a relationship that externally apparently I can start trying to dance with women that I'd be ashamed to speak to. If I can get a few drinks, now that I try to dance with them, what you got to see is internally, you start dancing with somebody else in you. Yeah, give us another round. That you are now dancing with somebody else in you. Any change like that is costing somebody. In this case, it's costing the you that you dance with when you're not drinking. Still, having said all that, where I was going to go, now that you should know, or that you can get some sensation of me continually pointing out and using things like dancing, a sexual relationship, the relationship apparently between the government and people, between life's institutions and individuals, that you can begin to see that everything that apparently is going on out here is going on internally. And then, recall, just only a few hours ago I tried to get you to see that not only can it be seen that metaphorically what's going on here is happening in me, I tried to really stick your face up close enough to see that it's not metaphorically. What's going on out there is going on in you. For me to say that you can't separate a fish from the water, that there is no out there, and that you're not separate from the environment, you got to remember the fish is a great picture, a great metaphor. Because the fish is not just in the water is in the fish. It passes through the fish or the fish dies. The fish is in the water is in the fish. There is a similarity with mortals and the inhalation and the exhalation. And ordinary people think, well, we're just talking about oxygen and carbon dioxide. Remember, it's only been a few weeks ago I tried to get you to see that you are breathing in. Other things are going on. How else do you explain emotions? How can somebody look at you and go, and you feel hurt? Well, that's the way they looked. You know, don't give me that shit. We're dealing with five senses. Don't just thought you go around in the dark and holler it's the way they look. It's not the way they look, it's what you saw. And you saw it with one of your senses. You saw it because light bounces off objects, to use the ordinary 3D description of this in science. It bounced off their face, their countenance, and it bounced back into your eyes. And as far as you're concerned, you saw them look at you in a disrespectful manner. And you're hurt. The thing is, there is no void between you and everybody else. There is water, and it is carrying nutriment. It is carrying energy. There is no such thing as empty space. And there is no such thing as a fish without water. And there is no such thing as water without fish. And the fish is not simply in the water is flowing through the fish. There is not simply you and the apparent environment out there. The environment is in you. They're inseparable. Are you still with me? So what I decided to try and bring out tonight it's not simply that there's no out there and there's no in here separate, and that it's in some way metaphorical. It's not. All of the kind of examples I make up and anything that you could bring up if you wanted to talk about your personal problems would have to do with what seems to be your relationship to out there, to other people. All right, I could note this. I could say, well, let's go ahead and go down that line tonight. And me point out that whoever you are, when I say you, I'm speaking of anybody on this planet, that your relationship to other people is your relationship to yourself. What a metaphor. No. No. That's what I just tried to bring you up close to. Not metaphor, not allegory, not parable. And it's not, of course, psychology. It's science. Don't forget in your books, your microbiology books, remember the C word, there's two words. Don't look under hair, comma, and then try to find an adjective. I just want to... See, I could have started off tonight and start, instead of government and etc., and dancing, sexual relationships, commerce, sports, anything. I could say, well, let's talk about people's apparent relationship with each other. And I could start talking about all the various ways. Well, I couldn't, of course, talk about all of them. I could start pulling out a handful of what seems to be volatile, meaningful, disturbing, problem-causing relationships between two people. That is, between you and somebody else. And then I could talk for a while and then say, aha, all right, now watch it. Take all of that and stick it in here. That same thing is true in you. And many of you go, yeah, I should have known that was coming. But it is not similar. It's not a reflection. It's the same thing. The water in the fish has been changed a little bit. And of course, the parts of the environment change in you from oxygen to carbon dioxide. But there is no substantial change in the fact that what is going on out there is going on in here. And what is going on in here is going on out there. If we took any relationship that you apparently have with more dominant sources that seem to be external to you, your family, your mother, the IRS, your religion, in the city sense, whatever religion you were in, your relationship to that would be the same relationship. Once I tried to describe it in any way, once you had any glimpse of it, would be the same relationship that you have with you. Of course, the relationship that you have with you is at least a conundrum in the city, if not insane, except for the fact, of course, they've got this notion of the unconscious mind. But it's not like anything of two equal partners. And of course, my dance card between the dominant and the submissive, some of you may think is unequal, but it's not, because you cannot have a dominant without a submissive. You can't have a dance without two people. But this idea of me saying your relationship with you, everybody knows that's true. That there does seem to be a partnership internally. And that you apparently have some relationship to some other aspect of you. Of course, the simple aspect of it, one simple description nobody cares to deal with until life, if it keeps going along the road it is, and have some more people in the city begin to have some greater expanded interest in the power of genetics, the power of nature as they call it, not only out there, which seems to be, of course, beyond debate, but in here. If it keeps going this way, then they may start getting close. I don't know whether we'll live to see it, and if we do, it won't be of any importance anymore. That the you dealing with you can simply be seen as, you could call it the mind-you, and then the you, rest of you. And that's it. That's the dance. And they can talk about, as they have for years and years, life, it can make people in the city talk about the you plus you internally. This feeling can either be, nowadays, an unconscious mind at work, or in times past it is the spirit. It is the carnal nature of man, and then the spiritual nature of man. It is the animal nature of man, and then the would-be spiritual nature of man. And it's quite simply one thing. It's the you mind, and then it's the everything else you. That's it. You can forget emotions, you can forget passion, you can forget human spirit. No reason that man has a sensation that there is a you plus you, that you do have some relationship with you. No reason you do and a dog doesn't and a fan doesn't and a worm doesn't is that they do not have yellow circuits. Their nervous system has not expanded to that degree. That's the only thing. That's it. The you mind and the everything else you. That's the dance internally. On that basis, your relationship with you is your relationship with everyone else. When you find someone that apparently, by just being able to look at them, somebody that does not like other people, remember this is not psychology, even though somewhere I'm sure some psychologist has said stuff like this. But I'm giving you a lesson in chemistry and physics and microbiology, of course, cellular biology. If you don't like you, you don't like other people. That's not the reason, because if you don't like other people, you don't like you. The fish got the water got the fish. If you don't trust other people, you don't trust you. That is, you don't trust the dance. You don't trust the you that you apparently are dealing with. If you fear other people, you're afraid of you. You're afraid of the dance. You're afraid of what seems to be the you that is not the you mind, that is not the you intellect. If any of you would stoop so low anymore as to want to talk to me about your personal problems, they would still be on the nature of what? By and large, so-called personal relationships with your mother, with your father, with your fiance, with your husband, wife, lover, whatever. And people still believe at city level that they want an explanation for it. If they're going to treat this malady, that they need to understand what brought it on. You could forget metaphor, you could forget looking anywhere, that if, and I just pulled out 3 verbal descriptions of being afraid, not trusting, not liking. If you find that you are afraid of your mother, were afraid of your mother. And if you were afraid and she's dead, you're still afraid of her. You are wasting all energy to believe that this in some way could be treated, should be treated, by understanding, investigating, and then understanding why you're afraid of your mother, why you were afraid of your mother or your father. You're afraid, or you were afraid, of your mother or father because you're afraid of you. That's it. If you're going to live in the city, you need a hobby. And so if you're going to live in the city, you can spend the rest of your life looking somewhere else. And I just told you. You are wired up to be afraid of you. And therefore you're afraid of your mother. You're afraid of your father. You're afraid of the postman. There begins to be certain kinds of degrees that it's of no great importance, but it has to do with how close you are into a dominant, submissive relationship to the postman, to the grocer down the street, to your next door neighbor. But if you're afraid of you, then when it comes to what seems to be relationships that are specifically of importance to you, where there is an immediate, meaningful, dominant, submissive dance going on, then if you're afraid of you, you're afraid of the other people, no matter who they are. And that's it. If you don't trust yourself, you don't never trust anybody else. You can't. Now these are just words. The words are attempting to describe, unbeknownst to people in the city, chemical, electrical, molecular phenomenon, the transfer of energy between these cellular structures known as humans. And they're called things like fear, mistrust, hatred, suspicion, cynicism, sarcasm. They're all variations of energy. The reason I bring this out is not to give you some new something to think about. But I wanted to state outright that some of you should be able to see that whatever seems to be a relationship between you and some other person, between you and something that apparently is out there, is the same thing. There is no difference. There's nowhere to look. There is no unconscious motivations. There are no subconscious traumas. There are no forgotten experiences that are now driving you in manners beyond your comprehension. I repeat again, all of that sounds fine. You can go to school. You can spend 5 or 6 years apparently getting to the point to take your doctoral thesis and respond to questions along those lines in a proper manner, and then put a doctor's degree on you and say that you now know everything that that institution of learning knows about the human mind, which is, of course. But they can do that, and it's fine. But you don't belong here. To be a revolutionist is you see that my fear of everybody is nothing more than a fish in water, because I am afraid of me. So it cannot be otherwise. That's it. That's the beginning of the treatment. That's the end of the treatment. Then a revolutionist looks somewhere else. It's only people in the city with a hobby that go, my, I need to study this further. There is nothing to study. As I said, I was surprised tonight that Kyrute used this one. I don't know where he comes up with some of my material. But I had whatever small plans I have before I start to mention the fact that all problems, as they are perceived, all problems are always caused by people trying to help. Now, of course, again, a problem is simply a human word, which of course is a form of energy, but the word is not necessarily the energy. To say that someone is causing you a problem is to say what? Is to say that someone is jerking on some piece of your mobile. It's to say that someone is dancing in your vicinity and periodically either steps on your toe or you step on their toe. It doesn't matter. But to say that somebody is causing you a problem is to be very disspecific. It's not good enough at all for a revolutionist use. But still, since everybody believes that somebody is always giving me grief, think about it. All problems are caused by somebody trying to help. Kairu put it so succinctly, of course, that anything I say after that is whatever I say after that. All problems. Anything that anybody's ever done to you that caused you any problem, they were trying to help. This is no justification. It does not mean anything. It means even less than a you-know-what. But think about it. All problems of all natures, little bitty ones between two people, real little bitty ones just between you, and then big ones between two countries. All problems are caused by somebody else trying to help. For years, look how misunderstood the attempted magnanimity of the Germanic peoples have been toward their neighbors in Europe. And they just, I don't know, they wouldn't avail themselves of that good Teutonic friendship. It can be seen in a sense of this split at any given time of a direction that apparently is going to be more conducive to growth and that which is going to be less conducive. And I even tried to take a grand, hair-raising, disturbing example to most people of wars, but you can see it. When you've got two parties, and you've always got two parties, so you don't have anything to talk about. One of them feels as though the other is giving me a problem, whether it's you and somebody else, whether it's Germany and France. But the other person causing the problem, the other entity, the other party where the split is, the problem is caused because somebody else is trying to help. That life in toto, you in toto, if you're part of the middle class of life, right in the bell curve, even the parts of you that consider the possibility of doing that which is less conducive to growth is still trying to help or it wouldn't be there. You wouldn't have anything to struggle against. You would not have the earth so that you could go taller. You have got to have something to move against. There has got to be an alternative on the 3D level, or there cannot be perceived change. We could not be talking about it. There could be no growth without the possibility of no growth. There cannot be any growth without the possibility of death. So all problems are caused by somebody else trying to help. In you, everything that you perceive to be a troubling attribute of yourself. Well, that other self of yours, of course. Not the right thinking part of you that's trying to work itself up and gain some control and authority over your life, hopefully before I die. The very part that you feel to be condemnable or questionable, the part that is the source of your bad habits, the son of a gun is trying to help. It is not your enemy. You would be insane to harbor an enemy within you. And of course, some of you individually, we could get off on the sidetrack and I could say, well, after what I've seen about you, it's not that far-fetched. But the saving, redeeming aspect of this is it can't be true because life, being more intelligent, better equipped, at least bigger than you are, which counts for something, believe it or not. Believe it or not. Size itself, when we're talking about the size, just take the known universe and then you. That alone is not just a spatial statement. It is a qualitative statement, believe it or not. But at any rate, life does not harbor within itself self-destructive tendencies that are going to be dominant. So, other than the fringes in life, people that do seem to be self-destructive, people that do seem to be suicidal, you can look on it simply as fingernails reaching their maximum length, falling off, dead scales. There is that fringe element. But in the heart of you, in the heart of life, there is no self-destruction. The continual movement is in the line at any given time, along large timelines, to those actions that are more conducive to growth, to expansion. Yet everybody feels as though they have an enemy. It would seem by now reasonable for me to expect that most of you, on a good day, I have drawn some of your energy and attention away from you, feeling as though your enemies are actually out there. Because I think, since I know that Kyruk keeps peeking in my windows, I think, in fact, he's got one similar to this coming up, so I can't resist going ahead and spoil it for you. But I can tell you, and I think he's going to back me up on this, you can save your energy, your time, your eyesight, and your shoe leather in going out here looking for your enemy. Most of you suspect that by now, don't you? But then what you got to watch is falling back in the hands of binary sight, bifocal sight and binary consciousness, and saying, yeah, you're right. And suddenly you have shifted into some small sideways slippage into a ditch, and you think we're back playing some kind of Hindu or Buddhist or New Age game, that I'm inferring, yeah, your enemies are not out there. Oh yeah, there's some real piss ants out there. But your enemy is not out there, because if we're going to be spiritual people, which I never told you we're going to be spiritual people, drive me nuts with that shit. But then some of you still think, yeah, you're right, our enemies are not out there. Our enemies are inside. It's our perception of our enemies. It's the animalistic hatred and distrust we have for others. Oh, as despicable as they may be, but still we shouldn't do it. I mean, it's hell for... Nobody ever wants to feel sorry for me, so I'll just have to do it for myself. For me to spend all this time and energy to pull some of you out of a ditch, and I'll back get you up on the highway, and I'll be down if you don't kind of stagger around and you fall off on the other side. While hooping and hollering and, blowing me kisses and thanking me for doing it, and then you trip over there. No, your enemies are not out there, but your enemies are not in here. But notice where we were. All problems are caused by other people trying to help inside of your own nervous system, operating at its full three-dimensional power. The feeling that there is part of you that wants to help is, from a revolutionary view, that is a more complex understanding, a more complex ignition of your own nervous system. That is in itself, if there is such a thing in the 4D world, that is itself a problem. It's not theoretical. It's not science fiction. And when it gets difficult, I can always go back to this. I know some of you don't like it because it's like I suddenly grabbed your face and I've stuck it either in a cream pie or into a picture of Curly. This is a problem on this basis. Inside of you and everybody else has been this thing crying out that I want to help. And you've had, before you met me, you had 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Did it help? Think about it. Did it help? If you've got the ability at all to be straightforward, to get your own self up close to your picture window up here, the answer is, are you kidding? Get real. Oh, did it help just a little? I said you got to be kidding. Well, did it hurt? And of course, if you got good, you wouldn't fall over in this other ditch. You'd go, nah, it's irrelevant. It's the yellow line that says don't pass going down the center of this road, but it's a one-lane highway. The yellow line's moved. I can't pass. It didn't help. It didn't hurt. But it is, in a sense, that which is causing the problem. Not the problem, but a part of the problem. What you perceive to be the problem is somebody trying to help. Now, there is an absolute reflection if I'm getting too obtuse again. Oh, heavens, no. If out in life. This is a fact. This is not some kind of something I conjured up to play with words tonight. All problems are caused by the people trying to help. How about out here in just an ordinary world? If churches, if religions were actually, the purpose was to help, just take the sense that they say they are. If they were actually in the business of helping, what would be the first thing they would do tomorrow? They'd close all the churches. Literally. Not because there's anything wrong with religion. Well, let's go to another area far removed, apparently. Politics. Let us take the Democratic Party here in this part of the world, say they're for the common man or whatever party, it doesn't matter. If political party X, if indeed they were really here to help the people, what would be the first plank? It would really be the only plank in their platform. That is, elect us and we'll self-destruct. Elect us and we'll go out of business. That would be the only way to help. Because in a sense, in the city it doesn't matter as always, not to us, it matters in the city because it keeps things moving. It transfers and transforms energy. But in the city, do you see that the very institutions, that's what I was going to try and take you to another direction, what seems to be huge things, way beyond the purview or the influence of individuals, which of course is Tommy Rott, not that agricultural hero, but Tommy Rott. It is Tommy Rott, but the feeling is from people that the institutions are far removed from just an individual, that they are in some way, since they're bigger, they're better. In fact, didn't I just infer that about talking about how much big the universe is? No. You were listening wrong. The institutions that would say, and that do say, we're here to help, they are causing, in a sense, once you begin to see it, the problem. In the city they're not, and once you can see in a four-dimensional way, they're not causing any problem. They're not causing any problem. They're the yellow line down a one-lane highway, no passing. But can you begin now, some of you can, it's a rhetorical question because it's that particular laugh that I can elicit at times, just a few minutes ago, that the very things, religions, political parties, education, they say we're here to help and in a specific way. But their very attempt to help, in a sense, is what causes the problem. Not really, but in a sense. Because, still this is not true in the city, but in a sense in the city, because it perpetrates, it continues the feeling that there is such a problem. And anytime you slack off and forget about it, you look up and there's a billboard and the Pope saying, the church wants you. Or you turn on the TV and some environmentalist says, look at these terrible pictures of trash and garbage on our highway. And you suddenly look out in your backyard and there are two pickup trucks jacked up on, and they're spilling oil out in the ground. Or you're driving down this highway on the radio and they're talking about the environment, the greenhouse effect, and we're going to destroy the planet. And at the same time you got this oil burner chugging it out, and at the same time you're smoking and you throw a cigarette on the highway. All of this, it seems to perpetrate, seems to keep bringing to your attention that there is a problem, which is supposed to. Because remember, there is no problem and there is a problem. There is that transfer of energy. Turn the tape over. When you're left to the limits, you're left to the dictates of the nervous system as it is. That is, you as you are, no matter who the hell you are, no matter who you were when you came here, no matter who you thought you were when you got involved with this, no matter how close you seem to dance to you, no matter how afraid you seem to be of yourself, no matter nothing. That's technical talk. No matter nothing. All attempts at that level, that is, all city attempts to help yourself, are doomed to failure. Now that's not even true, but there are no words to describe it. I'm having to give you the 3D view, that all attempts to help yourself are doomed to failure. They're not, because the success is that there is no success. That is, you keep struggling, you keep breathing, you keep hanging around crowds where there is an increase in CO2, never mind all that, of course, and that you help participate in it, and you engage in useless talk, it seems, and of course it's not useless to you. You engage in all of that, and you still can't seem to help yourself. Well, not at least to a satisfactory degree, or you wouldn't be here, of course, right? Right. But all attempts to help yourself are absolutely doomed to failure. You, the Pope, the President, if there was a Pope of Judaism and if there was still one in Islam, everybody, no matter who would seem to be the external heroes and leaders of the world, everything that they try to do to help themselves is doomed to failure. Also, everything that you can apparently strip or expand from one individual to institutions. The institutions' attempt to help is part of the problem. That all problems are caused by somebody else trying to help. Out there and in here. So any attempt you make now, I'm saying now on the basis that you're back at line level consciousness, ground zero, all attempts to help are doomed to failure. That is a fact. That is a mathematical fact. It's even more so, but there's no term for that. It is a fact. And you can struggle, you can worry, you can not struggle and worry about that. You can struggle and then worry and then take off a few days and not struggle and then worry and then quit worrying and then a few days later worry about the fact you're no longer worrying. You can do all of that, or, I'm not going into this, if you can, without me backing up, if you can take that off at a right angle, make up your own versions of all that stuff I just went through, if you do that, it's all fine. You're doomed to failure and you're succeeding. The more you talk, the more you struggle, the more you breathe, among other things. The more you talk about it. But at that level, all attempts to help yourself are doomed. Doesn't matter the guise, it doesn't matter whether you're doing under a religious banner, whether you're going under the vexillium of a philosophical notion, whether you are in an overcoat of psychological babble, no matter what it is, it's doomed to failure by your own definition, not mine. I'll never be there to say I told you so. I don't have to be, because in the city you don't need somebody to say I told you so. You do it. Of course, life does it. It just makes you think that you did it, and it calls itself like your unconscious mind, your better judgment, your conscience. But it's life saying you failed, which is life saying keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Talk more, breathe more. We're cutting down too many trees. We need more people. The more you talk, it increases the CO2. Never mind all that. The institutions out there and then in you, the you that seems to be the one that says, all right, we should change. I'm here to help you. I'm trying to help. Can any of you see this? That there is a way that I cannot, there's a way that I can, and not unjustifiably, not sans all validity, that I can point out to you. Now let me ask it. What might be it's a rhetorical question, so get prepared. What might be the ultimate purpose in life, the supreme twee of there being apparent leadership in the ordinary sense, if not to finally show a few people the folly of trusting anybody? Think about it. Not in the city sense, and you people out there on tape or wherever the hell you are, worse than that, either on tape or in Idaho. It's not cynicism, not sarcasm, not criticism, it's not anything. But what, to somebody outside the grip of 3D consciousness, just for glimpses, what better description could I give of one, this is just one view, one description verbally, of the purposes apparently of leadership, whoever it is, a pope, a church, a nation, a culture, a philosophy, a cult. What am I leaving out? Education. But apparently somebody or something, that is an institution, a political candidate, a hero, the mask of a hero, the illusions of heroes, the apparent historical recollection of heroes. Now that serves all a purpose back at the city, back at ordinary level of consciousness. But now I'm asking you, at least with a 3.5D glimpse, could it not be said that what better lesson than this apparent leadership in their city? What better lesson, what better example of the folly of trusting anyone than that? And if you don't like that, then let's really get good. Let's dance up real belly to belly, as they used to say. And try this. If you could see it, which some of you are close to, the folly of believing that inside of you is somebody either in charge, wants to be in charge, and has the right idea, if they can get elected or if they can seize power, that then you'll be on the right track. You'll have finally some substantial leadership. That is, if I can finally become a good blank, a good Jew, a good Catholic, a good human, a good whatever. If you could see it, then you would have to further have a small chuckle. I'm losing too many of you right quick. You understand where this question started? I said the rhetorical question of what could be an explanation of a better use in what appears to be in human life the occurrence, the need for leadership out here of all sorts, political, economic, moral, spiritual, the leadership from a revolutionary view. What could be a more exemplary, I'm talking about a splendid exemplary form of proof of the folly of trusting anybody. No attack on the popes, the churches, but if anybody could see, you understand that they're not wired up. Life is not wired up, that those who want to help can help. It can't be done. If they try to help, they're going to cause more problems. That is, they keep life growing. But from your view, they cause more problems if you could see at least with 3.5 eyes. So, from that sense, that's just chitting and chatting here between us, what greater purpose could this thing be serving than simply to show you the folly? I mean folly. I didn't put in conditions on it. The folly of trusting anybody. Now, that's where we were, and I tried to get you turned real quick, and not enough of you followed it. Internally, the folly of trusting anybody. Those of you who don't know it, my good old joke. This is not the same father now that did the one with the child. The first time he spoke to him was the father that said his little child, he noticed he had certain fears, and he thought one of them seemed to have to do with spatial distances. And so he put him up on top of the icebox, the little nipper, and he said, now I want you to jump to me, and I want to catch you. And the kid said, no. He said, I want you to jump. He said, the time has come for you to learn a lesson, a very important lesson. And the kid's about to wet his pants. And he says, no. And he's looking down. He says, I'm your father, am I not? And he goes, yeah, yeah. And you're my son, are you not? He goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm holding out, are these my hands? Yes, yes, yes. Am I telling you to trust me, and then I'm here to catch you? Yes, yes, yes. Well, jump. And he jumps, and the guy stands back. And he said, don't trust anybody. That was the lesson. If you had the right kind of view, you would see that the very thing that you have called you, even in a pejorative sense, when you didn't like you, the very thing that you've always thought to be in you that was the guiding light, the potential good force, the one that finds fault with you, the one that says, I want to help. If you could see it the right way, that is the would-be dominant one in you. If you could see it, there's one lesson to learn. Nothing to study, no further place to look. Well, there's some other lessons, they're just simply other views, but one view that would cure most of you, give you all the information you need to go on somewhere else, is to see, all right, the lesson life gave me with this is one, the absolute folly of trusting any fucking body. That is, not in a negative sense, not shame on me, not the guy one ditch and fall over here in another gutter, but it is a beautiful lesson. It's the absolute folly of trusting anybody. That's the lesson. That's it. Because nobody knows anything. Not back in the city, the Pope, your rabbi, your mother, your father. 1,000 popes put together to create a church. 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people put together and called a nation, a race, a culture. It doesn't matter whether it's one person or 1,000,000 persons. They don't know anything. If they did, they'd do something about it, wouldn't they? Right. What do they do? At the very most, they tell you what to do. They want to help. And you surely hadn't forgotten it's only been several hours ago I pointed out to you that all problems are caused by people trying to help. So they can't help. If they try to help, right away you know, well, get out of the way. If anybody's going to offer to help you in the city, stand back. Which is no cynicism, because if you understood, there's no difference out there. It's not a metaphor in me. It's the reality in me that anytime I want to help, stand back. It's not theory. How long have I been trying to help me? I don't know. Let me look and see, check my driver's license and see how old I am. Right? That's how long I've been trying to help me. And with what degree of success have you met, sir or madam? Thank you. It is the folly of trusting anyone. How much time we got? 18 minutes. Well, I'll be down. Who would have thought life would have come to this? I know you didn't in Idaho and South Dakota, but stranger things have happened. It's witnessed by North Dakota. And Alberta, for that matter, but as much new paragraph, I guess. As much as I personally favor, which is not the point, but as much as I encourage in all of you just a modicum, the encouragement of even a modicum of any sort of creative talent and interest and hobbies you have. And I personally encourage, love all sorts of arts. The supreme creative act is this, though. It is the being able to be straightforward. That is the ultimate creative act involved with this. Can any of you by now see a connection? I remember some nights back I spoke for a while and tried to point for a while about the difference between what people, individuals, say and what they think, the perceived difference. And I tried to ask you questions, I tried to push you around in certain directions about why should this be that way? If it is, to what end is life using this? Can any of you see a connection between that fact that there is a perceivable, in other words, there is a difference at city level, at the ordinary operational level of the human nervous system, across this planet in general, there is a distinct, perceived, felt, discussed difference between what a man says and what he thinks. Can you see the connection between that? Not only in the rise in this notion of an unconscious mind, but there is that covered. There is, of course, if you want to run back to the other spectrum of 3D time, to in the Western world, to Egypt or Greece, the whole notion of mythology you're talking about. The unconscious mind, as it's called now. You're talking about the difference between what men say and what they think. Not only that being one of the ways to see the rise, the connection, but the rise now in the notion that men have an unconscious mind. They have unconscious motivations that may be in conflict with their civilized, the civilized part of their psyche, blah, 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 blah. Can you see that there it is? It is simply the difference between what men think and what men say. That's one way to look at it. But besides that, can you see how it is related in men that individuals are apparently, very often, just commonly, perceived to be, an individual, one person to another, to be a very complex and very often distant from the moment creature. Well, I liked it. Did I lose all of you? All right. Remember, I was starting off this paragraph talking about, bringing back up to you, that the real art eventually in this is being able to be straightforward, truly upfront, truly get real time. It's not something you can fake, and it's not something that you simply decide, well, yeah, you're right. I'm going to quit all this horsing around. You know, if you could quit all this horsing around, you'd be in charge of the universe, because the universe horses around. But, of course, I mean something specific by it, something that is possible for a few people. few people, for no particular reason. As opposed to being straightforward, if you could be that way. What passes in the city for being intelligent, for being interesting, for being creative, for being civilized, for being sophisticated? Think about it now. You're talking to someone, and forget whether you seem to have some personal affinity or animosity toward the person, but you're standing there like at a cocktail party, a gallery opening, after the symphony, during the intermission at the opera, at some big party, and you meet some people. You are accustomed to taking other people as being complex. You walk up to a painting there at the party, and you don't know all the people, but you're impressed, you're glad to be there. We're just talking about city level, and there you're looking at a painting, a man comes up and he begins to say something about the interesting tension and juxtaposition between color and space. and what this seems to indicate as far as the unconscious feelings of the artist toward the oft-times oppressive grip of technology. And you go, my sentiments exactly, sir. And you turn around the man and you fall into some conversation with this other man. I can't say woman, but up until recently it was almost entirely men. I'm really getting off the point, we're out of time tonight, but I assume all of you by now know we're undergoing a real change in what appears to be the sexual status, relationship. Women are changing in the city. That means that they're actually changing. The so-called feminine revolution, etc., has been a reflection of it. Very crude reflection. One of the real changes that I pointed out, maybe some of you and your people I haven't even pointed out, but some of a better reflection, it doesn't mean anything to the city and they don't know it, but a better reflection of it is women being involved with this. And you people here now and taking these other cities, half of you now, just roughly me, I don't count it, but half of you are women. 4,000 years ago when this was going on, half of them wasn't women, there were no women. 1,000 years ago, 150 years ago. This is new of women even being involved with this, which someday as you begin to cash in your chips, I guess you can decide then, you women, whether it was a good thing or not. as if you had a choice. But at any rate, women, well, those of you, you're still right here in the crux of it. It's a gradual process, so I will point out, some of you men think women have not been perceived by men. I'm talking about in the bell curve of humanity, not somebody out here on the fringes. But just ordinary men do not perceive women as being complex in the sense that they do other men. Now they see them as being complex like, sexually, and they see them being complex on the basis as men have always put it. I can't even improve upon it. All the way up to Freud saying what in the hell they want, and I can't figure it out. All I want is, well, what do they want? Well, the only reason I stopped to do that was not to get a laugh, but to give some of you something else to bounce off against, including you women, because you're in the midst of it. Even you women, not you men, you women in the midst of this changing. That men seem to be complex, and I'm not using this yet in any positive sense, complex in a way that women are not. Not only men get away from women and say what the hell they want. Women can deal with men because they can handle them better. They can manipulate their own position better and take care of themselves. But as far as women are concerned, in the city, men are just nuts. Just crazy. But women, as a rule, women in general do not go away and worry about it, and they don't write poetry about it. Which has been some of my little jokes I was trying to get some of you to see with me talking about women tied with their hairs and buns up in turrets, writing poetry. Women don't go away. They just long ago accepted the fact, molecularly, that men are nuts. That is, men are operating in some way that's got nothing to do with reality in general. That is. Well, what does watching a basketball game have to do with fucking or getting food or raising children? Nothing. All right, back to the main road. Back to the main road. Back in the city, people are taken, if they're going to be taken seriously, as being complex. That is, there you stand talking with this person about art or whatever, politics, anything, and you talk to other people. And as you watch them, as you listen to them, just at the ordinary level. And then perhaps as you begin to talk, as you listen to what they have to say, and you say, well, you know, as a matter of fact, I have a slightly different idea about what this artist probably meant. And you talk to the guy. And he's standing there, he's doing this and that, and sipping, and smoking a cigar. And there seems to be a complexity if you're going to take the person seriously, that they seem to be intelligent, sophisticated, somebody worthy of your attention, somebody worthy for you to exchange some energy. They are not only complex, but I gave you another description if you can't find that one suits it all. It's like this complexity, this sophistication, this 3D version of intelligence is they are very commonly, this is my term, but you should hear me, they seem to be distant from the moment. And it would pass for such as this. If it was a writer doing it in a city or a voiceover in a movie or something, that the person might say, well, as I talk to Professor so-and-so, or as I talk to the priest, or as I talk to the Prime Minister, apparently his mind would go off because of the many details I was bringing up and the other things on his mind. So it passes for intelligence many times, or an important person. Now you got the Vice President of the country, you got a Prime Minister, and he gave you a few minutes to talk, and as he listened, he'd go, yeah. And you think, well, that shows a busy mind. It shows somebody busy because to some degree they seem to be distant from the moment. That is, from this instant. Yeah, okay. As far as this kind of activity is concerned, the revolution, that's watercolor yellow paint down the center of a one-lane highway. You understand? It's not even good moot. It's cheap irrelevance. It's water-soluble irrelevance. Of course, when it gets down to you, you'd have to see that this, in a sense, is something that I have got to stop. But it passes for a kind of complexity. Now, I'll tell you further. We're really running out of time. If you're falling into this, in the city, there's a thing that is spoken of. Life has made men speak very highly of and support another concept, and it starts with a C, and it's not that. Concentration. And it's normally used, I'm not going to try to tell you what the dictionary says, I don't think I've ever even looked it up, but it is used, the connotation of concentration, or one of them, the most common among sophisticated people, is that concentration is some sort of intellectual prowess. And it's not. That's all right for them to deal in that kind of verbal currency. But what are they actually talking about without knowing it? You know what they're talking about? They're talking about a closer connection between what a person does, is thinking, and what they're saying. It is not simply sitting down and, all right, I'm going to apply myself and concentrate on this. Now that appears to be what it is, but it is a drawing together, it is a closer drawing together of what they're thinking and what they're saying. What it is pulling them closer and closer into what I'm describing to you as being straightforward. It is not simply some intellectual ability or talent or attempt that they're making. All right, I'm going to concentrate. Wait a minute. I got to answer this question. I got to pass this test. I've got to concentrate. I've got to listen. I've got to really apply myself. I'm describing it to you. It is a pulling together. It's the attempt to pull together closer what the person is thinking and what they're saying. Not just overtly, not orally necessarily, but to themselves. That is what they are in truth meaning by concentration. It is a getting real. It is a being upfront. It is being straightforward with you. And it's not some trick. It's not something you can learn. You sure as hell can't learn it from a book. It's got nothing to do with memory. Well, it's got something to do with the lack of being tied to memory, but it's got nothing to do with improving your memory. You can't join Mensa or take their test. You can't get a book on how to increase your IQ. Of course you can if you want to, but it's got nothing to do with it. You'll remain complex. You'll remain, by and large, distant from the moment. We are almost out of all tape here. I simply remind you back from 2 nights ago, I have not ignored it. And I would still I was listening to tonight's tape to give you some little fair warning. The time is coming shortly that the only people I'm going to be dealing with on a certain level, those that can benefit, is you're going to have to find within yourself if you do have. And I am hinting that all of you do have some ability. You would not have been here this long. Trust me, I can spot you. I would have thrown you out and I'd say otherwise. Whether you execute this or not, but to find that you've got some ability, of course this is just a term, it's something else, reality, but what I mean by the ability to be more straightforward. It is not city complex, it is not city intelligence, it is not city sophistication, it's not city anything. But it is a being straightforward. We are out of Friday night time. Figure of speech. Goodbye, Idaho.